Since writing this diatribe, I have found, to my delight, that there are quite a few fledgling efforts underway in AI that fall squarely under the statistical emergence banner. I mentioned the work by Norman and Rumelhart at the Institute for Cognitive Science at the University of California in San Diego. That institute is in fact a hotbed of subversive PDP, parallel distributed processing activity. Paul Smolensky, a PDP researcher there, has developed a theory of perceptual activity directly based on an analogy to the branch of physics known as statistical mechanics, and it includes a mental counterpart to the physical concept of temperature. In physics, temperature is a number that measures the degree of random thermal jumbling going on in a system composed of many similar parts. In Smolensky's work, a computational temperature controls how much randomness is interjected into the system. Imagine a system that is looking at a simple scene. It has a television camera providing input to a computer. This system's job is to read out the most plausible interpretation of what is out there. Is it the word read? Is it the system's grandmother? Is it Smolensky's dog Mandy? When the system is first faced with a fresh situation, the temperature is high, indicating that the system is in a completely open-minded state, ready to have any ideas activated. As randomly chosen concept fragments, not full concepts, are tried on for size, the system gradually starts developing a sense for what sort of things fit. Thus the temperature is lowered a bit, lessening the chances of stray concept fragments floating in and destroying the fragile order that is just beginning to coalesce. As fragments start to fit together coherently, the system continues to turn down its randomness knob. Gradually, larger conceptual structures begin to form and to confirm each other in a benign self-reinforcing loop. Furthermore, these high-level structures now bias the probabilities of random activation of lower-level fragments, so that the thermal activity, though still random, is more directed. The system is settling into a stable state that captures in some internal code the salient external realities. When it is completely happy, or harmonious in Smolensky's terminology, then the system's temperature reaches zero. It is freezing. It is no coincidence that the moment of freezing coincides with the attainment of maximum computational bliss. The temperature gets lowered only when the system is seen to have made some upward jump in its happiness level. The idea of stochastically guided convergence to what is called a globally optimum state seems to have arisen, as do so many good ideas, in the minds of several people at once, spread around the globe. For all I know, it is an ancient idea, although I'll not go so far as to credit the ancient Buddhists with it, but it seems that the atmosphere has to be just right for this kind of spark to catch. People not involved in AI sometimes have expressed the spirit of this sort of thing very poetically. Here is Henri Poincaré writing in the early part of this century about the genesis of mathematical inspirations. Permit me a rough comparison. Figure the future elements of our combinations, full-fledged ideas, as something like the hooked atoms of Epicurus. During the complete repose of the mind, these atoms are motionless. They are, so to speak, hooked to the wall. So this complete rest may be indefinitely prolonged without the atoms meeting, and consequently without any combination between them. On the other hand, during a period of apparent rest and unconscious work, certain of them are detached from the wall and put in motion. They flash in every direction through the space, I was about to say the room, where they are, enclosed as would, for example, a swarm of gnats, or if you prefer a more learned comparison, like the molecules of gas in the kinematic theory of gases. Then their mutual impacts may produce new combinations. Now our will did not choose them at random. It pursued a perfectly determined aim. The mobilized atoms are therefore not any atoms whatsoever. They are those from which we might reasonably expect the desired solution. Then the mobilized atoms undergo impacts which make them enter into combinations among themselves, or with other atoms at rest, which they struck against in their course. Again, I beg pardon, my comparison is very rough, but I scarcely know how otherwise to make my thought understood. And more recently the biologist Lewis Thomas, in his book The Medusa and the Snail, wrote this: At any waking moment, the human head is filled alive with molecules of thought called notions. The mind is made up of dense clouds of these structures, flowing at random from place to place, bumping each other and caroming away to bump again, leaving random two-step tracks like the paths of Brownian movement. They are small round structures, featherless except for tiny projections that are made to fit, and then lock onto certain other particles of thought possessing similar receptors. Much of the time nothing comes of the activity. The probability that one notion will encounter a matched one fitting closely enough for docking is at the outset vanishingly small. But when the mind is heated a little, the movement speeds up and there are more encounters, the probability is raised. The receptors are branched and complexed, with configurations that are wildly variable. For one notion to fit with another is not required that the inner structure of either member be the same. It is only the outside signal that counts for docking. But when any two are locked together, they become a very small memory. Their motion changes. Now, instead of drifting at random through the corridors of the mind, they move in straight lines, turning over and over, searching for other pairs. Docking and locking continue. Pairs are coupled to pairs, and aggregates are formed. These have the look of live, purposeful organisms, hunting for new things to fit with, sniffing for matched receptors, turning things over, catching at everything. As they grow in size, anything that seems to fit, even loosely, is tried on, stuck on, hung from the surface, wherever there is room. They become like sea creatures decorated all over with other creatures as living symbionts. At this stage of its development, each mass of conjoined separate notions, remembering and searching at the same time, shifts into its own fixed orbit, swinging in long elliptical loops around the centre of the mind, rotating slowly as it goes. Now it is an idea. This poetic passage reminds me of nothing more than my jumbo systems for doing anagrams, which I developed in 1982. There, in what I call cytoplasm, letters bash at random into other letters, checking each other out a bit occasionally, mate. Then couples continue the search for other compatible couples, as well as for more letters they could goal up to make triples or quadruples. Syllables build, sniff at each other's ends, occasionally unite, making word candidates. Then those large gloms can undergo internal transformations, break down into their natural subunits or even into elemental smithereens. For instance, pangloss could become pangloss by regrouping, which could then become spoonerism, then by spoonerism could become langposs, and so on. Falkerism and kniferism, like spoonerism, only different, are other types of recombination mechanisms, as is falkerisms and foonerism. A typical low-temperature route, meandering through a portion of logological space, using these mechanisms, might visit in sequence langposs, laspong, laspong, lapsong, songlasp, songlasp, and so on. And if, as a consequence of global tension, the temperature rises, the entire bubble may burst apart and we will be left with isolated letters scattered all over the place, with occasional surviving duplets, maybe, here and there, souvenirs of what it was like before the last blast. Oh, but why suffer pangs of loss? After all, this isn't the world. Isn't this world, of all possible worlds, the very best?